everyone. Are here on a Thursday afternoon for 7 or 5 o'clock, where our guest is. So we are so excited to have you all here. And if this is your first time, I'll tell you what the drill is. And of course, if you have been with us before, you know the drill. So please say hello in the chat and tell us where you are from. We love being able to see where all of our community comes from. We know you come from Australia, you come from the UK, probably not Australia right now, but you will see it in the replay. We can never make these times work for the entire the entire world. So anyway, we're just really happy to have you all here. Now, I am very excited to have Anabella Wewer here, all the way from Duxbury. Did I say that right? Massachusetts, at the Art Complex Museum. Now, before I formally introduce her, I did have a couple of announcements. So if you have been following your emails, you saw that we're going a little bananas this week with doing lots and lots of YouTube lives. And that's just because we had some time in our schedule. I am going to go to Buffalo, New York for the Society of American Mosaic Artists and the Stained Glass Artists Association conference in Buffalo in a couple weeks. So we really wanted to try and reach as many people as we could. And these artists have so much to share before I got on the road. So without further ado, we have Kate Kerrigan coming on Saturday to join us. And that's going to be at 11 a.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. Eastern. And on Wednesday, September 20th, we will have Yulia Hananson talking about all the different kinds of art mediums she works in. And that will be at 2:30 Pacific and 5:30. So if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, make sure you click that button as well. And if you are not on our email list, make sure you go and subscribe to Mosaic Arts Online, and that will get you into our email list. Okay, so that's all for the announcements now. Make sure you stay until the end because we have a really special bonus gift for you. But on to our guest. And if you are not familiar with Anabella, I know she's going to share a lot about it, so I don't really have to do too much background. But it is pretty incredible to say where Anabella has been since March of 2022 when she sold her home, moved into her base camp Airstream with her husband, and decided to hit the road, literally. So without a home, she has been on the road traveling and creating this incredible body of work that you are going to see some of those pieces today. So I would like to say, without further ado, my friend and one of the most talented mosaic artists out there now and instructors here at Mosaic Arts Online, Anabella Wewer.
Hello. I am noticing a little bit of lag. So if I don't respond right away, it's coming.
Okay. So can you just share really quick with us where you are and explain this very exciting space that you have your work in now?
Yeah. So I am at the Art Complex Museum in Duxbury, Massachusetts, where there are three of us exhibiting in an exhibit called Unsettled Pieces, a Mosaic Exploration of Our Environment. Really exciting. This museum is beautiful, just gorgeous. And this is the only exhibit on now. I thought that the other one was going to be open, but it is not. They are setting up an exhibit of their collection to celebrate the 50 years of the museum, which was actually during COVID time, so they're just catching up. They took 2.5 years, they closed the museum and took 2.5 years to do a massive restoration process, both to the museum and the grounds. So it's just a gorgeous place to visit. Yeah. And so excited that there's a mosaic exhibit here. Found out today that it is the second one that they've had. Lori, no, I will come up with a name and send it to you. There was another mosaic artist here a few months ago. And here we are. So exciting because it is so rare for a museum to have an all mosaic show that is an invitational, not a gallery.
Right.
Setting, but an
And maybe you could share a little bit what that difference is between a gallery and being in a museum. And really what it's doing is putting a spotlight on calling your work fine art. And I know that's a conversation that goes on a lot between the difference between fine art and craft, but because you're in this museum, really that is fine art.
Yeah, I mean, that is, I assume how they select things. But so the main difference is that a museum has well, a collection that it owns. And that doesn't mean that all the pieces here are owned by the museum, because they have special exhibits like this one. But they do have a collection. And in general, museums have an educational mandate, right? So they're there to educate and to provide art to the public. This museum is actually free, so it's really providing a service to rent a gallery space and have a show, and then they get a commission from the work. And museums in general don't do that. They're here to just show the work for the work's sake.
But your pieces are for sale there, correct? If someone did want to buy them?
Yes, yes, but that's directly between us and whoever would want to buy them. Not the museum is not involved.
Right, right. That's another incredible part of, being able to display there. And you have 5 pieces in this show, and I know you're going to show those to us in a little bit. But talk a little bit about what it was like to, become this nomad, you and Eric, and how you were, really the challenges of working without a permanent studio. And these are just like, these aren't small, like, I know you talked about maybe doing jewelry if you guys got on the road, but all of a sudden this presented itself and it, became a thing where you had to actually have some pretty big pieces while in that 19-footer.
Museum decided to do. They had a 10-year plan to renovate the museum, and they just closed and did it all at once. So they were closed for 2.5 years, and so are now just catching up with the slate of shows from before. I didn't know when I made the decision. So my decision was, well, the environment is a timely topic, and I wasn't sure what was going to be the big issue now, and so I didn't want to be doing the work way ahead of time. So I was like, well, I'll do it, the year before, and then we decided to sell our house. So I was traveling with the piece behind me, which is 40 inches wide or 42 inches wide. Um, yeah, it went everywhere. It went to California. It was finished in California. Um, I spent, I think, 5 weeks in Florida at my parents' place. Um, and then, so I was like, okay, it's mostly the background, so I'll be okay. But it is pretty big, and then it had, foam packaging to keep it safe. And it sat on top of all of our belongings in the Land Rover that pulls the trailer. It was madness.
It was precious.
Yeah.
It's
And
not the
then
baby, but it might as well have been the baby.
it was like every time anything happened, it was like, is the mosaic okay?
Yeah, exactly. And that was just one of them. There's
Yeah.
4 other ones there, and we'll talk about those in a minute. But kind of back to the nomad, what inspired you guys to sell your house and start this new lifestyle? And I know it was, unfortunate around COVID and all of that.
There was a lot of things. We had been talking about, traveling more and seeing the country, because we, I think, knew more of the rest of the world than we do about the United States. And it was like, oh, let's go see the national parks kind of thing. Um, but then some things happened in our lives, and COVID, and so much loss, and all of a sudden that immediacy of anything could happen at any moment. So let's go do it right now. And so
Right.
and so we sold the house and packed everything in a small trailer, and, well, not everything. Everything is in storage. We packed the things that we needed for the road, and 3 crates of mosaic materials, and off we went. Yep.
And so back, let's just back up a tiny bit and talk about the theme of what was to inspire a few of these pieces, because unless you get really up close, you really don't see the trash. And so talk a little bit about how you didn't have to, how you chose to use trash in these pieces, and what you made with it and why.
And there are three artists here, and we were each free to choose whichever topic was important to us and execute it whichever way we wanted. And so the one behind me is called The Long View, and it is about plastics and microplastics in the environment. And so I started picking up, I mean, I always pick up trash, but I started picking up prettier trash from the beaches and just plastic as I went along and we were hiking and whatever, um, and started sorting it in colors. And the kicker was the bottle of Aussie shampoo that is like the bane of my existence. I'll talk about it more when we see it closer, but I couldn't find that color in glass, so making the transition was not easy. And well, you know me, I can be stubborn sometimes. So instead of changing colors, I just was like, I have to make this work. So I did. And
Yes, the purple.
I did a talk, a gallery talk here in the museum live earlier today. Um, and I was sharing that I didn't realize that I had an activist slant to my work. But it's also pretty big. So I was like, well, it needs to be at least 4 or 5 pieces. And I started looking around and realized that some of my older work is related to the theme. So on Bleach, which was shown at, I'm sorry, at MAI in Detroit, is about coral bleaching ultimately. And that is just happening more and more and more. And then there's an older piece that's about fracking in Pennsylvania and is made with Marcellus shale from the middle part of Pennsylvania. Is preserved or frozen.
Wow. Well, we're all going to be so lucky to see them up close when you do turn around in a few minutes. But I have a couple more questions. And tell me what, being this nomad, I mean, there's just no other word to use. And I think it's kind of fun and sexy. But how did it change your practice? Like, most of us have studios in our homes and we just roll out of bed, go to the kitchen, get coffee, and go to the studio. At least that's what I do. And I know you did too. But now I know you have a cute little espresso machine in the trailer, but that can't be your art studio. So how did it change your practice? Because you
It
still
cannot,
made these pieces.
I mean, and it's about to change again, right? My practice has to change to accommodate this lifestyle that I've chosen to have. And we thought it was going to be a year, but for various reasons, we got started later than we thought. So it's going to be another year at least. Um, and so to make these pieces, I had to stop. I mean, they really don't fit anywhere. I mean, they barely fit in the car on top of the crates. And so, while I visited family in Florida, and I stayed there for 5 weeks and worked on this one behind me. One was finished, and then hey, so how would it be if you stayed here for 4 or 5 weeks? And I'm like, your studio is tiny. And she's like, we can make space. And so that's what happened. So the last piece that you'll see is called 2 degrees centigrade, and it was started in Seattle in Kelly's studio and then finished in Pennsylvania at my
Yes.
in-laws place.
Right where we did our last live. I stood right on the spot, and Kelly showed us the little niche she made for you, and how the three of you worked across that bench is really quite phenomenal.
It was
And
amazing. It was amazing. I mean, I was getting text messages like, okay, so how big is the piece and how much space do you need around it? And, when I got there, I mean, they were amazing. Both Kelly and Todd were amazing. And it was really wonderful. And I don't think we were ever really in each other's space except for the flying pieces of pottery or, crockery coming across.
and did everyone agree on the same music every day or podcasts?
Um, when it was just Kelly and me, and we were in and out of the studio freely. I was there most of the time, all of the time, because I had 5 weeks. Because that's how long I had rented an Airbnb for. So that's and then I had other things to go do. So um,
Nice.
and it was fine.
And not many people might not know that you actually own another company. And so, how does that work? How do you navigate the company you and Eric own and do this as your job?
Websites. Um, Work for 2 or 3 days, but we walk out for lunch and go for a hike or go to the beach or whatever. Yeah.
That's fantastic. So let's talk about your artwork, and especially the pieces that are in this show, and what inspired you. I know you were, each has its theme because of what the museum presented, but I know that's still something close to your heart no matter what. So talk a little bit more about what inspired you to make them and use the materials that you did.
So the piece behind me is about microplastics, and so I love the ocean. I love whales. They're my favorite animal. Well, they're right up there with giraffes. Um, and they're dying because, I mean, for a number of reasons, but one of them is because they're eating all this garbage that they're finding on the ocean and confusing with um, food or fishes. Like, a floating plastic bag in the ocean looks like jellyfish. Um, so, so that is troubling to me, deeply sad. And then I started reading more about plastics everywhere, and it turns out that they have found plastic in mother's milk, like microplastics. Um, Found out that the lint that comes out of our dryers is in large parts plastic because of the clothing, like the materials that are being used that are not natural. Um, so we don't see it. There are huge warnings about kids crawling on the ground in carpets that are made with um, synthetic materials. So all of that was informing the work as it was going. So yeah, um, you will see the plastic. It is totally visible. It's just that we're too far right now.
And we talk about, though, it's really interesting because the piece that you have there is looks like a watercolor painting. So what inspired the watercolor painting, and like who are your mentors that you sort of look up to, that how did it all come to be? Because the at least that and 2 degrees Celsius are so dynamic and different, yet so incredible.
So, so my family keeps telling me that I should work on something lighter, and I really admire watercolors. So I started playing around, and by then I knew that we were selling the house, and uh, and I was like, yeah, I should do that for when we're on the road. And I started playing around, and I was fascinated by the way the colors pull and like the color mixes, and it's just fascinating. Um, but I didn't know what I was doing because I didn't like take a class first, which is what I should have done, but I didn't. I just, started messing around, and the paper was wrinkling under the watercolors, right? Because I wasn't doing it right. And then that became the most fascinating thing. So instead of making life easier, it made it harder because because I was really determined to make Mosaic look like wrinkled paper with pulling watercolor. And the image was just, abstract. It doesn't really mean anything. I was just going with the plastics that I had and colors and the motion that I wanted. So the line across was, kind of like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. And then I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And so I went with it. Yeah, so it does look like nickel paper and watercolors. Um, I wasn't particularly influenced by any. Has certainly influenced that dimensional part of the mosaic. So when he did get to see these pieces, because he was here the day before I brought them to the museum, um, he's like, "Oh, I never thought of putting anything behind the dimensional thing." Um, but to answer the question about my mentors and my inspiration. I mean, I can call him and say, I have this problem, my mistake, and he'll, tell me what he thinks. Um, who do I look up to? Marco de Luca for sure. He is a huge, huge source of inspiration for me. Largely, I mean, for many reasons, but one of them is he is one of the first ones that started working with a boceto, so without a drawing. Just making the mosaic do what it does. And that's what I love to do. I rarely ever draw or plan my mosaics. I just see them in my head and I make them. And that's how he works. So definitely him. Um, Dino has been pushing me to work looser. You know, lines can say different things, as you know. Um, and so, yeah, this constant conversation about what that is and what it means, and aesthetics, right? So he just likes them to be looser. Um, let's see, Joe Braun was my mosaic crush when I started. Um, Still is, and I'm so happy that she's starting to come back to making art. I mean, maybe she was all along, but we're seeing it now. Yeah, yeah.
That's awesome. And that kind of leads into you've done a art residency. And do you recommend that sort of environment for maybe other mosaic artists? And did you enjoy doing I know you've done it in Ireland and other places. And do you enjoy that?
I've done a few. Yes. Um, it is not about going to a place so much, and it's about who we're with. I think it's about the people and the conversations that happen. So that one that you were talking about was what I keep calling the dream team, because it was amazing. Trying to figure out if we all do really speak the same language. We do, uh, and yeah, I mean, and then the unexpected part, I think, at least for me, was the environment. We really all did react to the place where we were, which was Port Townsend, Washington, which is an old fort by the beach. And so every day at random times, people would leave to go walk on the beach or get materials. And it was this crazy, oh, I found this, which you need. And before that, I was in Ireland with Kelly for a month in June of 22. Um, and we both went there. Well, first of all, we live in two different coasts, so we rarely ever see each other. And we both knew that we wanted to spend more time together, but you know, um, and so we went to Ireland because we got the residency there, and so off we went. And it was amazing. Time and close the gallery at a certain time. Olive. Whoops! We haven't opened the gallery, and that's how it would go because we were so involved about how we make, why we make, how we teach, why we teach, how to teach what we know and what we think, and how to convey the things that are more than just do it this way.
No, and that is what's so beautiful about the bodies of work you have both created and have now shared with Mosaic Arts Online community by the way you're teaching and by you guys going back to your studios and figuring out new ways and different things and you bringing in the language and the different ways that lines can speak in on Demento is really really incredible. So I guess let's talk a little bit more about you're at this art complex museum and with this theme and how did it really tied into your practice? I don't know if now is a good time and better to sort of show the work and start to talk about it that way
Yep.
because this is such an amazing thing that you do have this added to your body of work now and you have it in a museum, but where are we going next? What's going to happen next?
I don't know. I fell in love with mosaics through micro mosaics, and I've never had the time to go back to that because they're so time consuming to do them, in the original Roman way. And so, which I did study, but I haven't gotten to really practice. Um, but here, so all of the work is related to the environment in one way or another, or more specifically, human impact on the environment in very many different ways. So I look around me, like everybody. I didn't want to insert pieces of plastic that look like whatever forks, shovels from the or whatever. So I cut them all into tessera size, into my tessera size, which is pretty small in some instances. And I just work with the colors um, and the line, right, to achieve this watercolor effect, but also to transition from glass to the plastic and do those gradations that I love to do. Um, so like when you look at it, you can't really see, but I'm going to turn the camera around and show you it. Um,
There we go. Perfect.
so that's the overall, right? And then, for example, that right
Flip the
there,
camera.
this right here, is
Way closer.
a piece of line from a lobster trap. There's some more plastic right there that is from what I assume is a bag of, a grocery, like a produce bag. This over here are largely game pieces that I found on a walk, like from toys. So if you look closely, you'll see the very famous bottle of Aussie shampoo over here. And so, yeah, so the challenge was to get the smalti in all the colors that I needed to make all those transitions and those gradations. So over here, you can, I don't know where it is, right here. You can see times white. So I had to learn how to cut it so that it didn't do that. And then the line that goes sort of across, that has a bunch of my old flip-flops. There are some Teva flip-flops in there. Yeah. And then the background, there's a ton of plastic on the background.
Wow.
So that was my moment to the fact that there are animals dying because they're starving, because their tummies are full of plastic. And then I chose to make some of it more obvious. So I left some of the mesh viewable. Somewhere up here, there's a bit of red mesh. Oh, there it is. That is from the same kind of mesh, but it's one that they use in Canada, and it is red. And Aaron Pankratz sent me some. So there are, straws that I found.
And
These are these flecks of color. So I wanted it to look like I dripped the watercolor paint, and so what I did was wrap that tubing that they use for electricity things, for electric things, around the marble, which is basically what's happening to the animals, right? They're getting choked by plastic and the rings from beverages and stuff like that.
And did you tint or your pigments for your mortar of the colors?
In some places I did. I also, on purpose, took out some of the tessera so you can see the color underneath. But I took it out because I was talking about the the degradation in the environment and the losses because of all this plastic. So yes, in some places I did tint it depended really on how saturated or how together I wanted the color to be, because then I wanted the color to be slurring around. So I actually left some of the white in between in some places.
And aside from trash, can you talk about the materials you used? You mentioned marble, but what else?
Well, aside from all the plastic, there is just smalti. I use whatever smalti I need. So I don't know. I couldn't tell you if it's Italian or Mexican or whatever. And there are some pieces. There's a little bit of gold in some places. And there are some pieces of I want to say Smarties, but that's not what it is. Sweeties from Wits, yeah, Wits End.
Yep.
And some of them came from Maryland Mosaics, I think. I was just after the color because my tessera are so little. Those cut underside are perfect. So I was, especially when I was dealing with those colors right there, I I was, give me anything that has that color and I'll cut it and make it fit.
I remember getting the purple call. If there was any purple out there, if anybody had purple, anything purple. When you created this piece, did you do all the colors first, or what was the chronological order of creating it?
I know I just switched it back, but I'm going to switch it back because I started with the colors, and I was like wanting to do that, especially once it became clear where we're going to sell the house. But I couldn't because I was going to end up working in impossible places, right? So I had to start making the background as I went along. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, the last few weeks or maybe months now was just all the white work. But yeah, it was impossible. Like I wasn't gonna leave, those little bits in there to try to do after.
Right. Yeah,
So
that makes
yeah. So then I had to establish where the lines were gonna be and how wide they were gonna be.
right. Do you want to take us to the next one? I don't know what order you want to share these in.
It doesn't matter.
We'll ask questions, and then anybody that has questions, we'll ask questions at the end in the chat for Anabella regarding each of these pieces or any of her process.
So this is Unbleached, which was in Detroit, at the MAI in Detroit. And I made it because well, how I found the fossils has to do with jewelry, but people that have taken my course have seen this because the reason why I fell in love with it is because, whoops, it's not focusing properly. Hold on.
That's good.
There's perfect andamento in the fossil itself. Like there's stoppiamento in it. That is perfect. It goes from 1 to 2, like it should. And so I kind of fell in love with it, started doing it, and while I was working, my goal was, so the piece is called "What If Unleashed," because um, I was imagining these fossils coming to life and getting their colors back. But while I was working in this section, it started looking to me. I'm a scuba diver, and it started looking to me like bleached coral that I've seen. And so that's why it's here, because I looked around my studio. I'm like, okay, what am I going to do for the show? And all of a sudden, all this piece and the other ones over there became more relevant. I was trying to switch the camera back before and I couldn't, so give me a second. I don't know, it's like stuck, so I'm just gonna walk around.
Okay.
Yeah, so look at this museum, it's gorgeous. It's just so beautiful.
So beautiful.
Yeah. So I'm gonna start over here with 2020. So this is, it's tough right now because the light is not helping us here, but black. And it's all about andamento and lines and whatnot. But it started because it was getting to be Christmas of 2020, and I was packing presents to send to my son. And I lost you, Tami. I don't know if you have me, but I don't have you.
Okay.
Are you there?
I'm here.
I hear you.
I should come back.
Okay. Anyway, I'll keep talking.
Yes, keep going.
Okay. So I was like, oh, what a tough year. And I was saying that it was really hard that year to see the bright spots, but we knew that children were born and we had family members get married that we watched on Zoom and all of that. So so the colors are hidden. So you kind of have to walk around this piece to the sides to see the color.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. As long as you can hear me, that's great. But I understand that my camera's gone dead for a second. So we're going to try and figure it out.
Yeah, no, I can hear you, but I just can't see you. So I'll just keep going. So this piece was, as I said, a reaction to the pandemic and that year. And then there are sections where the andamento crosses and goes entirely the other way. and this is coal. It's the only piece. Well, these big ones are jasper, and then this is coal, and the rest of it, for the most part, is marble that was um, that I just used enhancer to make it darker. But all these things that go sort of against the grain are reactions to something. So the first one that I showed was when George Floyd was killed, and then all the protests and the Black Lives Matter movement. And then I was working on this piece. I was working on this line on January 6th. And so that just took a turn. I didn't know what was going to happen. And, and coming from Venezuela, I've seen some of these things before. So I just made a line that went against everything, that went against the norm, because that just felt completely irregular to me. So that's 2020.
What do we do though for the rest of us?
I haven't seen any comments, so I don't know if people are actually listening, though I see that there are people there.
Yeah, definitely have people on. I don't have any questions yet.
Yeah. Okay.
Why
No,
don't you go
as long
to
as I can
two,
see us, it's fine. Or see me.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, degrees, and we can talk about that.
Yeah.
And we're trying to figure out how to get my camera back.
Sounds good. All right. This is fracking number 1, which there's a series of these. I just kept this one. The other ones are gone. And it is, so this is Sinca tiles. So it's porcelain man-made materials that I cut to look more like stone. So I didn't cut them perfectly. I wanted the roughness in the edges. And the rest of it is Marcellus shale. And it talks about the drilling for Marcellus shale in Pennsylvania, and on both sides of the coin, because it has done great things for the economy for some people, but it is also devastating the environment, and there are huge problems in that part of the country that is being drilled because of trying to get all this gas out. And the Marcellus shale, when it comes to the surface, it oxidizes, and so I was able to pick through the pile and get gradient. So those 3 pieces were already made and in my studio, and some of them have been shown before, but they all fit the theme, so that's why they're here. And then this is 2020. I'm sorry, this is not 2020, that's 2020. This is 2 degrees centigrade, which talks about glacier melt and the polar cap melting and the ice shelf disintegrating. Basically, I just heard the other day that a huge chunk fell. There's a line running across it, and it's a crack that, as I understand, you in the snow and in the ice for so long. So they found 2 ships, I don't know if they're Viking ships, but that area. Somewhere in here, this one. I don't know if the camera is focusing properly because I left my glasses over there.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. It's fossils. It's like vertebrae, because they're finding all kinds of mammoth fossils and all kinds of things that were just buried. However, and then there's the little bits of metal here standing for the drilling that is starting to happen farther and farther north. for minerals and oil and whatever. So there's all these things. But then also the first oil spill already happened much farther north than it ever had. So on this section only, there is some glass, some iridescent glass, and some bits of glass um, from Kelly's studio. She was working with those, and I was like, "Ooh, can I have some?" um, and then just using on the mento to talk about the melting and to make it look like this whole thing is just disintegrating. Um, and then in some places I left um, the thin set, so the absence of the ice and just water. So I don't know if you can see, but it's lightly tinted in blue. So the thin set is there. It is also in some places underneath because where the glaciers are still strong. Glaciers tend to look blue when they're not dirty. So that's
Wow.
yeah. So there's some nails to stand in for these things that they're finding, um,
Make her full screen.
and this is I love this material. It is old safety glass. So instead of tempered glass, they would put wire in within the glass for safety reasons, and that was found in a beach in Scotland. Those little bits. So I used
Wow.
them there for that. Yeah.
And
So
is there one more piece?
no, that was fine.
Oh, that's all of them.
Yeah.
Okay. That one's beautiful. So where will that live once the show is over?
Um, who knows? I mean, it's going to go to storage with me with all the other mosaics. Um, there's been a couple of inquiries about buying a couple of them from people. So what happened? Yeah, don't know. But the show is here until
All
November.
right. Well,
So a while.
you got to put the phone a little closer to you so we can hear you. It's the mic is getting muffled.
Okay.
There we go. Much better. Well, I only have a couple more questions, and we've been on for almost 50 minutes, and Jerry and I are still trying to figure out how come I froze and went black. So, really quickly, I know this is like the best version of upcycling I've ever seen, but there's so many ways to be successful in this medium. And what would you consider someone like that if they were going to focus on it? Like, what would you recommend? Yes.
Practice, practice, practice. Really do a lot of tests. Don't. I know that there's a tendency to want to finish a thing and show it, and there is such a thing as practice, right? And we don't need to show everything. Some things are going to fail, and then learn from those failures. Because we get to know the material, we get to know how the adhesives work. If we're using materials that we haven't used before, which I love to do, um, then you have to get to know it, and you have to listen to the material itself.
So I mean, it's just incredible what we are seeing more as our MAO community continues to grow, and they take your courses and they do show us that they're getting better and better with what you're saying is practice. So does anybody have any questions that they want to put into the chat to ask Anabella? We are available to answer those, even though you can't see me, which is probably all for the better. I mean, come on, who wants to look at me? It's the artwork in Anabella we're here for. So if anybody has any questions, please put them in the chat now. And is there anything else while we have everyone here, Anabella, that you want to add to this talk?
No, I just want to thank the museum for hosting us today, and definitely for hosting this show. They've done an incredible work, and I am so thankful.
And they were all excited that we're here live with you guys today.
Yes.
Yeah, and
Tell
just,
me,
go ahead.
when is the show up to? Like, what date is it up to? And tell people what area of Massachusetts you're in case someone's close by.
So Duxbury is south of Boston, just a few miles from Plymouth. So this morning I went to see the Mayflower, did a drive-by. Uh, yeah, so really close to Plymouth, on the, sort of on the beginning of the Cape. And the show is here until November 5th.
Okay, great. So you still have some time
Yeah.
to get there if you're in the area. Well, it
Yeah.
doesn't look like we have any questions coming in from our chat. And I know I don't have a camera on me right now, but if you are a regular here, you know that we love to offer a very special bonus. And Jerry's going to put it in the chat to have it there. But you can receive 15% off any of Anabella's courses from right now until, do we have a question? With Anabella 15 until tomorrow night at midnight. So you have a little more than 36 hours, 12 hours to go and
24.
get any of Anabella's courses for 15% off. And I think you're up to 8 courses now, 6, 7? I can't
6 or
remember.
7, yeah.
7 courses. And it's a great opportunity to learn from Anabella. And thank you guys so much for being here. This was such a great event. I'm so sorry that my camera did not stay on the whole time. But Anabella, thank you for being here. And thank you everyone for joining us. And hopefully we'll see you Saturday for Kate Kerrigan's talk. And we'll have our technical difficulties figured out.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, everyone.